Hey, me again. Yet another version of what I can be. This is Night Out. It's Kelly, out with my bestie, doing a thing. Haven't seen her in weeks. Um, I have had many, many friends in my lifetime, but none of them have ever come close to my grade 2 best friend, and we're now almost 30 years old. And still, she is still my best friend, my sister from another mister. So she has been such an immensely huge part in my healing and keeping on track, getting back on track, doing all that. I love her to absolute bits. So when you find that good friend, make sure that you hang on, because they're often worth it, but make sure that you let go of the ones that aren't. So I just watched through my last video again, where we covered 17 and some of 18, up to the time of me moving to Banff, and then in turn moving home from Banff. Very interesting video for me to watch, because I've never actually thought that much into the impact that the whole Banff trip and, that kind of stage in my life actually had on me when it comes to certain cases of sexual assault in my life. They're the ones that had always been on the forefront of my memory. And the Banff ones were not those. So it was very... I have hair on my lips somewhere here. Very eye-opening, even for me. When I make these videos, they're very raw. This isn't me coming in with a script. I have no freaking clue really what I'm going to talk about, except for I've now touched on it on 2 videos on my next diagnosis, so I suppose I should probably cover that at some point. But yeah, so I'm learning this as I go, and learning more and more about myself, and I think that's probably a huge part of what the point of this is for me to cathart, if you will. So yeah, so I guess we're gonna continue from there tonight. Now, I'm in a very different mindset again tonight than I was, when I started my last video. In that I had a fantastic night and spending time with my best friend and seeing some old friends, and it was really a very, very nice night out. So, almost 2 o'clock in the morning. Really not the time that I should be making a video, but we'll maybe just try and keep this one a little bit shorter. So we left off at Banff and me coming home from Banff. And I would like to actually take a quick second just to make sure that there's no misunderstandings when it comes to my family. In my first video, I know that I mentioned how important my family has been. And in so many cases of sexual assault and abuse and all of that, there are so many times is ties to family ties to the abuser, between the abuser and the abused. My case was not like that, and I don't want to be anything but crystal clear on that. Nobody, not a single soul from my family has ever touched me inappropriately in any way, shape, or form. There's no daddy issues here, if you will. So this has all been outside of my family, and I really want to make sure that there is an understanding of that, because my family is such an important part, and if one day maybe my family ends up seeing these videos, I don't want them to think that there's a possibility that anybody's going to leave this thinking that they had anything to do with the negative part of this. My family has been nothing but amazing, 100%. So, let's continue on to 18. 18 is where things for me really started getting mucky in the brain. So, and even in 19, so some of these stories, if anybody's fact-checking them, fact-checking my life, I may intertwine some years here just strictly from not knowing exactly when things happened, how they happened, right? So 18 was a horrifying year for me. Once I moved back from Banff, I got back into, as I mentioned, the grind, and I went to work for my dad. So I had a nice stable income, living with my parents, paying rent for them, just trying to learn how to adult, I suppose you could say. And my mental health issues continued to evolve. Now, one thing I wish I could do for you is, I mean, I don't ever want anybody to see me in that state again, but to maybe have a perspective of, like, my parents who are seeing this from the outside, because I can't even begin to understand what they went through. Like, I can't even begin to understand. Because it's one thing to be going through it, and it's a whole lot of garbage, but to watch your child go through it and to just be doing everything in your power to help them, but knowing that you're not ultimately going to be the thing that changes it, I can't imagine that, and I can't express the amount of guilt that I have to talk myself out of for putting my family through this, because don't get me wrong, it was hard to go through it, but you want to believe that you can do everything right as a parent, and even when you do everything right, they didn't do everything right, but I think on the scale of parenting, my parents were pretty bang on. They have had their issues, but nothing to the extent of, mentally debilitating or detrimental to their youngest daughter. My older sister was turning out just dandy. When she was 16, 17 years old, it's like she already had everything figured out. She was dating the man that she's now married to since she was 14 years old. She went to school right after high school. She got her education. She got her career. She got married. She had kids. She started her own business. They bought their house. She's had it figured out. Always. She's always had it figured out. And I know that you don't have it figured out, but that was a lot of pressure on me, because not because she was putting pressure on me, but because this was the way that I thought I was supposed to be. You're supposed to get out of high school. You certainly don't move to Banff, although that was hardly a move to Banff, if you will. And then you go to school, you go to post-secondary, you get your education, you start your career, you grind it out in the same job for 25, 30 years, and then you retire and you do whatever. Of course, you have kids and get married in there too, which is something I still haven't figured out. So I was already hard enough on myself, nonetheless, placing myself up against what my sister had done, what my sister had accomplished. And this is what I thought you were supposed to be. So yet again, I feel like a failure. Nobody ever said I was a failure except for me. But there I am again, right? Not living up to what whoever said I was supposed to be. Whatever was in here was telling me what I was supposed to be. So, 18, working at the old plant. I started seeing and developing more of the highs when it came to my emotional state. 18 was when I was diagnosed bipolar. Now, I think there was definitely signs of bipolar before 18, but that's when the actual diagnosis came out. This was one of the first times that I had spoken to a psychiatrist who I got him at the hospital one time when I was in for another suicide attempt, or suicidal thoughts or actions or something like that. To be honest with you, I do not know how many times I've been to the hospital for suicidal thoughts and actions. I can remember at least 3 times having to do the whole activated charcoal thing. If that was all of them, I'm not sure. By this time I had started participating, if you will, in some self-harm and some cutting. Not anything too extreme, but still obviously not ideal. So I finally met this one psychiatrist who I got on board with. All right, he seemed like somebody who actually genuinely cared about me, and that was what I fought with back and forth a lot with the medical system. Is that you go to the hospital, and don't get me wrong, like, I understand a young girl coming in with, suicidal thoughts or actions, having taken too many pills, and I'm sure they see this stuff all the time, and a lot of the time it's false alarms. But as a parent, for instance, how do you know that they're all false alarms, right? You don't know that. You don't know that this wasn't the time that she did take too many pills. So we can't just let her lie at home and maybe die? Like, so I can understand the frustration from the medical employee side of you. I really enjoyed going into the hospital at night because the day nurses were awful. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to speak out against nurses, because what you do is amazing. Amazing. And I could never do it. And I have nothing but respect and admiration for you. But I really like the evening nurses because they're always like fresh out of school and just excited to be good and save lives, right? And the day nurses, they're a little higher in seniority. They've been doing this for a while. They've probably seen me there 3 or 4 times already and just think, it's just broad again, right? Faking it. I remember having an IV in my hand the one time, and they put that big patch over top of it, and the nurse ever so gently pulled it back until she got to the needle, and then she just went ahead and like ripped it off. And I just like swelling and bruising all through my hands. Like, I don't envy them for what they have to put up with on a regular basis. I really don't. And I couldn't do it. I know I couldn't do it. I have so much respect for what they do. But it's very difficult when all you want is help. I just wanted help. I just wanted to figure out what was going on. I just sit there and meet I don't know how many doctors and nurses and go over the same line of questions every time just to get sent home but come back if you have more thoughts or if she does something else or you just want to feel like they care. And that's not why you're doing it, but anyway, so finally I got paired up with this psychiatrist, and now I can't even remember his name. Shoot. Anywho, he finally sat down and listened to my story and started putting forth a plan to help. A genuine plan, and not the typical, just keep an eye on her and make sure she doesn't do anything plan. I actually ended up meeting him later on from my doctor, my family doctor, whom I love. She's an amazing, amazing physician. And I guess I wasn't necessarily a typical case at that point because I really didn't know what was causing all of this. Whatever this was happening in my head, right? I had a good childhood. I had everything that made up what should be a perfectly happy and functioning adult. So I understand why people were easy to write me off as a drug addict or an alcoholic, just wanting attention. I get it. I understand why they feel that way, but that wasn't the case for me. When I was 18, I started seeing things that you can't tell me to this day weren't there because I was seeing them. But I can understand where the concern comes in. So, I would see shadows. And the easiest way for me to describe it is, shadows. But if you've ever seen The Exorcism of Emily Rose, when the priest is home by himself and he starts seeing these shadow figures, I saw those. But I didn't just, it started out, I'd catch a glimpse of one out of the corner of my eye, I'd look, it'd be gone, right? No big deal, whatever, you're just seeing things. Vivid imagination, no big deal. But, it got to a point where I would start talking to them, asking them to go away, asking them what they wanted. This was terrifying. I'm 18 years old. I'm seeing one of these shadow figures is what I'll call them. One of these shadow figures began to follow around every single person except me, and oddly enough, my one friend. Saying it out loud is difficult because it sounds insane. It sounds absolutely crazy. And the doctors thought so too. And I don't blame them. But I had to live for a while of just seeing these things out of the corner of my eye, no big deal, to literally it got to a point where I'm working in a building with 40 to 60 employees at any given time, and one of these things is following around every single person there. Now I have a different perspective from a spiritual standpoint, from certain things that I have learned over the years. and that are true and resonate to me, and some people wouldn't agree with me, and that's fine. I can remember I can remember falling or going to sleep one night, going to bed, and you know when you're lying and your eyes are closed, and somebody puts their hand in front of your face, but your eyes are closed, but you know that it's there. You can feel that something's there. So I was going to sleep, falling asleep, and I had that feeling that there was somebody holding their hand in my face, right? So naturally, I opened my eyes. And when I opened my eyes, there's one of these shadows right in my face, right in my face. And and as I am starting to panic, I don't even know what I was doing. Um, it literally flies back up into the corner of my room, like up above the door, and then kind of slinks its way down to the other corner of the room in front of a shelf of stuffed animals that I have. And not slinks, it was very fast. It was like goes over. And then I, in turn, at 18 years old, have a very childlike reaction, and I flip the covers over top of my head, and I began screaming for dear life, begging somebody to hear me. My parents did, and they came running in to my room to find out what was going on and get me calmed down. I can speak more lightheartedly about it now because, like I said, I have a deeper understanding of what I now believe it is and was. But at that time, when you're seeing things that aren't there, now they're not just being visible out of the corner of your eye, but they're showing up in your face at night, and then they're trying to talk to you. And that night they couldn't form words, or I wasn't speaking their language or something. I don't know exactly what it was. Well, that's when you're officially crazy in the eyes of the medical world. So, night went on, life went on. I remember being at work, at the trust plant, doing my thing, and there's all of these things everywhere. And I began to panic. I can't take it anymore. They weren't hurting anybody that I knew of, that I was aware of, but it sure as shit was scary having them around. So I go into full-on panic mode, and I go to my father's office, and I collapse on his floor, and I feel guilty because how do you explain that one away? It's my father's place of business, and he's, we're a very proud family and a very private family. Oh, this video doesn't prove that, but and I let that happen around all those people. And it's not, I don't feel guilty. I couldn't help it. But it's just, it sucks. It just sucks. So then I'm on I mean, the medical community's radar. Seeing things that aren't really there is a big old red flag. So I can't remember if it was then or at another incident or something. I know that my dad had to spend a period of time taking me with him everywhere, because I couldn't be alone, because I lived in fear of these things, I don't know, coming after me, coming after the people they're following. I don't know. I didn't know what was going on. 18 was the first time that I ended up taking an extended stay in hospital. I think 3.5 weeks total in the Hantelman unit of University Hospital. That was a very interesting experience for me. You just wonder how you ended up there, because when you go in, when you're getting admitted, they take you down through what's called HICU. HICU, which is like lockup, in the Hantelman unit, so that if you're fleeing danger or danger to any other patients or anything like that, then you're in lockdown, actually. But you have to walk through that area to go get weighed and all that stuff when you first get admitted. And literally, there was a lady there, an older lady, and she just sat there, like, with her hand, a finger up in the air, just doing this. And then a big guy with a face tattoo, looking very menacing, was also in there. And you're thinking, like, how the hell did I end up here? And you think you don't belong there. But the reality of it was, I would have done anything to escape that reality. Now you're not just depressed. You're manic depressive, bipolar 2. So more so on the depressive side. The manic side came from some, I would go for days without sleeping. I would have moments of pure, like, thinking nothing can go wrong. I don't really feel like discussing the manic side of things. So here I am, locked up. You don't leave the Hantelman unit unless somebody signs you the fuck out. And quite honestly, this was the first time that anybody had really been like, all right, let's help this girl. And they didn't. I was in there for 3.5 weeks. There was lots of young people in at the time. So quite honestly, I can say that my first stay at the hospital was fun. I was finally in a group of people who understood. They had their problems, eating disorders and, schizophrenic, and I made some very nice friends. I just wanted help. And I got stuck with one of the worst humans I've ever met in my life, Dr. Malcolm. I thought the first guy was bad. This guy had nothing on this bitch. She didn't come see me for at least 2 weeks, maybe 2.5 weeks. She basically spent the entire time telling me that I was lying. And when you're going through what you're going through, even if I was lying, even if none of what I had said had happened to me, had ever happened to me, the fact that A, I've tried to kill myself on more than one occasion, and B, I'm lying about this stuff, if that were the case, if I was lying about this stuff, isn't that a little bit on the side that maybe we should try and figure that shit out too? I don't know. You don't just lie about seeing things that literally you're petrified of. I was petrified. I had to live every goddamn day in fear unless I was in a vehicle. My dad had to keep me in a car because that was the only place they couldn't get me. They're trying to talk to me. I wish I was making it up and then I could be a fucking fantastic story writer. Like, so I think I saw her 2 times in the 3.5 weeks that I was there. And you know what? I'm probably better off for it because that bitch had nothing good to say or do for me. I had one very kind, caring nurse, Chris, I believe his name was. And I met some really nice people, and it was very, very hard to leave that situation because it was so nice to be around people who you didn't have to explain everything to. Who just, they just got it, you know? You're depressed, they don't ask why, they know, there's not an explanation for it. You're just, some days you wake up and you want to kill yourself because you can't deal with everything that's happening anymore. And they just got it. It was comfortable. I never wanted to leave. Eventually, everybody left. But it was hard. It was so nice to have people who understood. Or didn't understand, but understood that they couldn't understand. So I got released. Continued to see Dr. Malcolm. Didn't get any treatment, really. They started changing out my medication at that point because clearly something wasn't working anymore. Now, I've been on this medication since I was 16, and now I've started hallucinating. So something's got to change. Put me on one medication, and one of the side effects is a very slim, rare chance of developing a potentially fatal rash. And I ended up getting a little something under my lip, and they did a test on it, determined that it wasn't a cold sore. They didn't know what it was, so I had to stop taking that. So now I'm back on this fucking medication train again. So now you've got at least 3 weeks of being sick, and that's if the pills don't make you want to kill yourself. Prozac had that effect on me, exactly the opposite of what it was supposed to do. I tried to kill myself when I was on Prozac. The first time I did it, it took months. Fortunately, we could just kind of now add on, since we found an antidepressant that seemed to be doing something right and then just less right, so then you can just increase that dose and try and nip that in the bud. But now we're dealing with bipolar. So depression, if this is the playing field, depression puts you down here, right? You're just in the shitter all the time. There's no happy. There's no joy. There's no excitement. It is just regular plain depression. Garbage all the time. You sleep all day. You're constantly in pain. Headaches, backaches, everything. That's depression. Okay? So then you take pills so that your depression can get up to here again, right? And you can function relatively normal in society. Yay! Mission accomplished. Okay, well, let's just go ahead and boom, throw a little bipolar in there. So now, playing field, this is me. Hanging out down here, and then it's just like, okay, yeah, all right, let's start taking medication. Feeling good, feeling good, feeling good. Way out the other direction. Let's just not sleep. How about let's sleep? Who needs sleep? That's overrated. Let's just draw pictures. Terrible artist. I don't know why I ever thought that was a good idea. All right, let's just go and meet random folks and just think that nobody will ever do you wrong ever again. Like, okay, so then you find the medication to bring you back down here, but 9 times out of 10, I shouldn't say that, it was like 3 times out of 4, it's something that's going to pull me back down into this area. So trying to find that cocktail of medication that's going to put you at least somewhere in here. I don't want to be down here. I can't afford to be up here. Because my God, the money that I spent on shopping sprees when I was like, wee, was dumb. Thank God I had a job and parents who didn't support that. I had to make my own money. So now we found something that was good here, brought me up to here. Now I'm going this way. Now it's having the opposite effect. So here I'm back down here. Okay, let's just play with this a little bit. 12 years later, and we still tinker with my medication. Because for the most part, it'll go right. But at least 3 weeks of being sick, physically ill, vomiting, nausea, whatever it might be, whatever the case is, it's not fun. It's not pleasant. And then, if you find that this medication is not working for you, well, then you start that 3 weeks all over again. You have to give it at least 2 weeks to see if the effects are going to be for the positive. So 2 weeks of just hoping that maybe this will be the one. And then another week of typically at least another week of nausea, if it was one that you wanted to stick with. So that's a garbage procedure, but what do? Everybody's body is different. So then we think that we found, something that's going to work. Does seem to be working. Okay. No more of this happening. Yeah, okay, we're bringing the depression up, bringing it up. Fantastic. Well, look where Kelly is. Here's an idea. Let's just stop taking our medication because we're all better. Like, I don't even know how long I did that dance for. Years. Cat's playing around. Like, it took me a long time. I don't even know how long, to be exact. A long time to figure out that medication isn't a quick fix. It's something that you have to stick to because your body is not producing chemicals properly. And so this is to supplement and level out those chemical balances, right? That's what most mental illness is, right? It's chemical imbalance, if not all mental illness. I don't know, I'm not a doctor. So then I'm doing all these leaps and bounds and nailing it. And then I just decide, okay, well, I don't need this anymore. And then I'm right back to square one. I can't even begin to tell you how many times I've done that dance. My parents might be able to give you some insight, but... So, I guess that's what most of 18 was for me. Working, crashing, burning, trying to find medication, hospital, in and out, doing my thing. Just trying to figure myself out. Not a year that I have very much memory of at all. When I talk about things, I can bring bits and pieces back. Like, I remember that there was a lady who I shared a room with at the hospital, and she was an older lady, but I can't remember her name. And I know that she wrote me a letter, and I thought I found it not that long ago, but I don't know. Like, I just wish that I had some of those details. 18 was also, I think it was 18 and 19 when the eating disorder started a bit too. Not a skinny girl, in case you didn't notice. Used to be, yeah. This has now become my battle, if you will. A lot of the mental health issues I've gotten on a proper path with. For some reason, this whole physical image thing is something that I continue to battle with. And I think it has its reasons and its purposes as to why I haven't quite nipped this part in the bud. But you know what? I'd rather be eating and healthy. Might not be the most healthy, person that you'll ever meet, she says as she burps. But ultimately, I can take care of myself. I'm not in any kind of physical sickness. But I did start gaining weight when I moved to Banff. 10 pounds in 3 weeks. I got called mountain ass when I moved home. That was a tough pill to swallow. I had always been skinny. And when you play basketball 6-7 days a week or whatever it is at whatever time of year, it's easy. When you stop doing that activities but keep the shitty eating habits you had, it catches up with you. And you know what? That's just a whole nother ball game that we don't need to tackle tonight. So I feel like 18, I can't. I told you what I can, but most of it is just straight up gone. And a lot of the next few years after this will probably make it through 19 through 24-ish pretty quickly because it's not there. 19 brings on the era of my relationship, my first real relationship, and 20 brings on a new diagnosis. So I think that's where I shall leave things at for tonight. And as always, to be continued.